different hustlers you meet in the game.
57 years old, a legend still standing, yet his eyes carry the weight of 100 storms. LL Cool J, the first true icon of mainstream rap, the man who made the world call hip-hop by its real name. Behind the stage lights lies a childhood stained with blood, a father who pulled the trigger right in front of his 4-year-old son, a stepfather who beat him without mercy, a glorious career built on scars and tears. And then, when his wife was hanging between life and death, when the people closest to him turned their backs one by one, LL still had to smile for the camera. He survived every storm. But what part of LL Cool J's soul has died over the years? What makes the tragedy at 57 too much for even him to bear? The man who laid the foundation for the hip-hop empire. On January 14, 1968, in Bayshore, New York, a boy named James Todd Smith was born, the one who would later make the world know him as LL Cool J, short for Ladies Love Cool James. But before being adored by women and praised by the world, he was just a boy tinkering with music on an old wooden table in his grandparents' attic in Queens. At only 10 years old, LL wrote his first rap lines using rhythm and rhyme to escape the haunting memories of a painful childhood. When he turned 16, his grandfather, a jazz musician, bought him a recording set worth $2,000. To most, it was just a gift. To LL, it was the key that unlocked his destiny. In 1984, while many teenagers were still struggling with school life, LL Cool J sent a demo titled "I Need a Beat" to the newly founded label Def Jam. No one expected that the amateur recording would make Rick Rubin, the label's founder, play it over and over again. A few weeks later, LL was signed. When "I Need a Beat" was released, it sold over 100,000 copies, an enormous figure for a 16-year-old rapper. From that moment, LL officially paved the way for Def Jam to enter hip-hop's golden era alongside names like Run DMC and the Beastie Boys. His debut album, Radio 1985, became the manifesto of a new generation. His powerful voice, confident lyrics, and minimalist but pounding beats made American youth go wild. The record sold over 1.5 million copies, turning the young man from Queens into a star. When Bigger and Deffer 1987 came out with the hit, I Need Love, LL became the first rapper to bring romantic rap to nationwide radio. He didn't just rap to fight, he rapped to love to live and to tell his story. LL's career continued to soar through the 1990s. Mama Syed Knock You Out. 1990 was a fierce comeback against those who said he was past his prime. The title track earned him his first Grammy in 1992, a historic moment since few believed a commercial rapper could win such an honor. By 1997, LL had sold over 20 million albums worldwide, becoming one of the most successful rappers in history. But LL was more than just a rapper. He wanted more. In the early 1990s, he crossed over into acting. His first role in The Hard Way 1991 was just the beginning. Then came Deep Blue Sea. 1999, Any Given Sunday. 1999, SW8, 2003. Proving he was not just a rapper acting in movies, but a true actor. TV audiences remember him best as Agent Sam Hanna in NCIS Los Angeles, which ran for 14 consecutive seasons, a rare record for an artist from hip-hop roots. Not stopping there, LL Cool J became the charismatic host of the hit show Lip Sync Battle, bringing laughter and positive energy to millions of viewers. He remains one of the few artists whose fame has endured for over 4 decades, something even many modern rappers admit they could never do. But fame is not only light, it's also a test. LL Cool J once said, "I'm living proof that you can come from darkness and still walk into the light if you keep believing in yourself." Perhaps it was his childhood wounds that forged his strength, allowing him to stand firm in a world that can easily consume people whole. To this day, LL Cool J has won 2 Grammys, received 11 American Music Award nominations, and became the first rapper ever honored at the Kennedy Center Honors 2017, an accolade usually reserved for music legends like Bob Dylan or Stevie Wonder. In 2021, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, forever securing his place among American cultural icons. From a boy holding a microphone in a damp Queens basement, LL Cool J became a global symbol, the man who took hip-hop out of the neighborhood and into the heart of popular culture. Yet behind the bright halo, cracks began to show. One by one, the masks of fame would fall, revealing a raw truth that the LL Cool J empire was built upon both pain and tragedy. The question is, was the man truly as cool as his name suggests? Or was that strength merely a way to hide a deeply wounded soul? When gunfire shattered a legend's childhood. Every legend has a beginning, and sometimes that beginning is written in blood. In 1972, inside a small house in Queens, New York, little James Todd Smith, only 4 years old, witnessed something no child should ever see. It wasn't a nightmare. It was brutal reality. His father, James Nunez Smith, in a jealous and furious rage, ambushed LL's mother, Andrea, and his grandfather, right there in the kitchen. The sound of gunfire exploded through the house. Bullets tore through the air. Blood splattered across the refrigerator, the walls, and pooled on the cold tile floor. Both victims survived a miracle. But what no one could save was the childhood of young James. In later interviews, LL recalled on Nicki Swift that his grandfather, even as he lay bleeding and barely conscious, looked straight into his eyes and whispered, "Run and get me a towel." A simple order, yet enough to keep the 4-year-old calm amidst hell. He ran, grabbed the towel, came back trembling, but didn't cry. Perhaps from that very moment, something inside LL Cool J awakened a survival instinct, a quiet defiance in the face of violence, and a courage born from despair. But behind that resilience was a wound that never healed. The boy grew up haunted by fragments of memory. The gunshots, his mother's screams, the smell of gunpowder, and the image of his father being led away by police into the night. Every time he heard a metal door slam, he flinched. Jazz music reminded him of his grandfather. And every time he saw blood, he remembered that morning. People often say that children raised in violence will repeat it. LL Cool J chose the opposite. He turned pain into power, transforming trauma into thunderous beats. Every drum hit like a hammer, breaking the past. He once said, "When you see the worst of humanity at 4 years old, you have only 2 choices: fall apart or rise up." I chose to rise up. But the price of rising up was heavy. After the shooting, LL's family broke apart. His mother took him away, trying to rebuild their lives. Yet the wounds weren't just on the body, they lived in her eyes in sleepless nights, in every weary breath they shared. As he grew older, LL suffered from recurring nightmares. Some nights he woke drenched in sweat, certain he could still hear those gunshots. The unease followed him into his teens. He became wary, quick-tempered, easily triggered. Yet that same energy ignited his performances on the mic. His raps, fierce, relentless, sometimes seething with rage, were his way of speaking to the past. And perhaps it was that horrifying memory that forged LL Cool J, a man both powerful and deeply fragile. He wasn't just the first rapper to bring hip-hop onto the Billboard charts. He became a symbol of rebirth from ruin. In rare interviews, LL once said, "I don't hate my father. I just wish he'd made a different choice. I forgave him, because if I didn't, the past would have swallowed me whole." Forgiveness, 2 words that sound light, but weigh more than any bullet. Yet even in forgiveness, LL Cool J never forgot. He once visited his father after his release from prison, only to say, one thing: "I'm still alive, and I'm living better than you ever imagined." That wasn't revenge. It was a declaration. A statement that the child who once stood in a pool of blood had become a man the whole world would listen to. But from that moment on, LL Cool J's fate was marked. That early tragedy not only stole his childhood, it opened a long trail of loss, betrayal, and loneliness he would carry for life. And perhaps from the instant the gunfire rang out in that kitchen in 1972, a legend was born. But so too a piece of his soul died forever. The beatings that haunted him. If LL Cool J's childhood began with gunfire, then the years that followed were marked by the sound of whips and the muffled cries caught in his throat. After the horrific shooting that tore her life apart, his mother Andrea tried to rebuild by starting over with a man named Roscoe Granger. At first, Roscoe appeared gentle, calm, the kind of man she believed could give her son a stable home. But in reality, he became the second nightmare of LL Cool J's life. According to LL's own accounts in interviews and on Nicki Swift, Roscoe was a violent abuser. He didn't hit to teach, he hit to release his rage. The reasons were trivial: spilling milk, answering too slowly, or simply looking at him the wrong way. The house turned into a torture chamber. Roscoe forced young James Todd Smith, not yet 10 years old, to strip naked, kneel on the cold floor, and endure beatings with anything within reach: electric cords, vacuum hoses, or whatever he could grab. The crack of the lash, the tearing of skin, the stifled sobs, they blended into a horrific symphony of a stolen childhood. He didn't just want me to hurt, he wanted me to fear, LL Cool J once said. And indeed, that fear became part of his blood. Every time he heard Roscoe's footsteps, he flinched, bracing himself. No one knew why this time. Sometimes he was beaten until he lost consciousness. Once he fainted and woke up in the bathroom, wiping blood from his face by himself. The beatings came swiftly, mercilessly. No one stepped in. No one spoke up. Even the neighbors who heard screams would just mutter, "That's their family business." So young James learned to be silent. Silence was survival. He later said he built an imaginary world in his mind where there were no belts, no screams, only music. Music was his only escape. As he grew into adolescence, that silence turned into anger. LL Cool J began carrying knives, then guns. "I became my own bodyguard," he said. Not to start fights, but because he no longer trusted anyone else to protect him. At school, if someone lifted a hand too quickly, LL would react instantly, as if the beatings were still waiting behind him. Yet strangely, within that darkness, a fire was born. Each time Roscoe hit him, LL swore to himself, "I will get out. I will never let anyone hurt me again." When music found him, when hip-hop's drums began to pound, LL found not just his voice, but control. Every rap verse, every beat was a rebellion. The sound of a child once beaten, bloody but still standing. Later, when fame came, LL was often asked why he never sought revenge. His answer was simple: "I forgive not because they deserve it, but because I don't want them to control me anymore." For LL, forgiveness was victory. But that victory cost him nearly a decade of a destroyed childhood. Studies show that over 20% of American children experience domestic violence, but few ever overcome its psychological scars the way LL Cool J did. He carried that fear for years. In his early career, even the sound of something heavy dropping would make his heart race. Psychologists call it PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But LL never went to therapy. He chose to write. He let the pain flow into rhythm. And perhaps no one in rap understands the power of pain better than him. Songs like Mama Said Knock You Out weren't just artistic statements, they were the screams of the boy who once fought back against violence. Every beat was a heartbeat, every bar a hammer smashing his chains. The story of Roscoe Granger is one LL rarely revisits. Not because he forgot, but because he chose to move on. In a 2017 interview, when asked about that period, he paused for several seconds and said quietly, "If I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't be who I am today. But I wouldn't wish it on any other child." A cold sentence, yet chillingly powerful. Because in that childhood hell, a great artist was forged. But from that same place, LL Cool J would forever live with a shadow named Roscoe. The man who taught him that sometimes to become strong, you must first learn to stand up from the cruelest blows. Simone's fight for life in LL Cool J's world. Nothing could bring him to his knees, except the moment he watched the woman he loved most fight for her life. In 2004, Simone Johnson, his wife since 1995, mother of their 4 children and his partner since before fame, was diagnosed with chondrosarcoma, a rare bone cancer accounting for less than 0.2% of all cancer cases worldwide. The disease was not only rare, but brutal. It ate away at bone-robbed patients of mobility, and most died within a few years, if discovered late. Simone's doctors gave her a stage 3 diagnosis. Her remaining time could be counted in months. The surgery lasted 15 hours, a true battle. LL Cool J never left the hospital. He sat outside the operating room clutching the small cross Simone used to wear. When doctors said they needed a bone graft to save her leg, LL immediately volunteered a section of his own fibula to perform the transplant. It wasn't just love, it was absolute sacrifice. Simone's recovery took nearly 2.5 years. Every step was agony. Each night her wound swelled, blood soaking through the bandages. But LL never left her side. He woke early to prepare her medication, helped her walk and read the Bible with her each evening. Once when Simone collapsed from pain, LL just held her and whispered, "I've seen blood. I've lived through hell, but I'd rather face it all again than lose you." Their love, tested for decades, became a fight for survival. Those who saw LL Cool J as the embodiment of coolness, confidence, swagger, indifference, could never imagine the man behind the stage lights spending hours tending to his wife's wounds. He turned down shows, canceled film deals, devoted himself entirely to Simone's care. When she began healing, he moved the family to Malibu, where the sea and sunlight became her therapy. And then a miracle happened. Simone beat cancer. The doctors called it a medical miracle, but LL simply smiled to him. The miracle was faith. Both later said that the battle taught them the true meaning of life and love lessons no Grammy could ever give. But Simone didn't stop there. On the same foot that had been operated on, she tattooed a small lollipop, a symbol of sweetness, after pain. That tattoo inspired her to create her jewelry brand, Simone I. Smith Jewelry, featuring the Sweet Touch of Hope collection, each lollipop pendant representing survival and love. A portion of every sale goes to the American Cancer Society to help other patients. Both she and LL wear those necklaces as a reminder they faced death and returned together. LL once said, "People think strength is about muscles. To me, real strength is standing by someone you love while she's in pain and still making her believe everything will be okay." That line moved millions. Because behind the tough exterior, the muscular body, and the title King of Hip Hop LL Cool J is just a man terrified of losing the one he loves. When Simone fully recovered, they renewed their vows in a small garden ceremony. No spotlight, no audience, just family and close friends. LL wore a white suit, held her hand, and softly said, "You're the reason I still believe in God." In a career spanning over 40 years, LL Cool J has earned countless awards, but his greatest victory wasn't a Grammy or a Billboard #1. It was winning back life for the woman he loves. Because in a world obsessed with fame and fleeting glory, LL Cool J and Simone Johnson proved that some things can never be replaced: true love, and the faith that even when death knocks, they can still open another door together. The pain-named Jam Master, J. October night, 2002. LL Cool J was filming a TV show in Los Angeles when his phone buzzed. On the other end, a trembling voice broke the news. Jam Master Jay, the legendary member of Run DMC, his mentor, his big brother in the industry, had just been shot dead in a Queens recording studio. The words hit like a bullet straight to the heart. LL sank to the floor, silent for minutes. He couldn't believe it. He refused to. Jam Master Jay, the name forever tied to LL Cool J's beginnings, wasn't just a mentor. He was the one who opened the door to professional rap. In 1984, when teenage James Todd Smith was still rapping beats on his grandmother's wooden floor, Jay was the first to listen and say, "You've got something nobody else has. Hold on to it." That single sentence sparked a legend. And now the man who once gave him faith lay in a pool of blood inside the same studio where it had all begun. Police concluded that Jam Master Jay was shot point-blank in the head inside Merrick Boulevard studio in Queens. The killer escaped, leaving behind chaos and a gaping void in the heart of hip-hop. LL visited the scene the next day. Red and blue lights flashed across the walls. Yellow tape hung across the studio door. He stood there motionless, staring through the glass window. The same window where Jay once smiled, patted his shoulder and said, "Let's go, James. Let's make another hit." For years, the case went cold. No witnesses, no evidence, no justice. LL spoke little. When asked, he only said one thing: "I'd rather wait 18 years than live forever without justice." And wait, he did. 18 years later in 2020, 2 suspects were finally arrested and charged with Jam Master Jay's murder. When the news broke, LL posted just 3 words on social media: "It's about time. No triumph, no vengeance, only quiet sorrow." Because justice couldn't bring his brother back. Jam Master Jay wasn't just a mentor. He shaped LL's artistic philosophy. Jay once told him, "Don't try to be like anyone else. Make them want to be like you." That line became LL Cool J's guiding compass throughout his career. But when Jay died, it was as if that compass had shattered. LL later admitted, "Since that day, I can't walk into a studio without remembering the smoke, the flashing lights, and the screams." Jay's death wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was another warning bell for hip-hop. After Tupac and Biggie Smalls, now Jam Master Jay, another brother lost to gunfire. LL began to pull back from the party scene, from the glitz and chaos of fame. He turned his focus to family and community work. He founded the Jump and Ball Foundation, hosting basketball tournaments and music programs for youth in Queens, the same neighborhood where he and Jay grew up. He wanted kids to find rhythm instead of revenge, beats instead of bullets. On stage, LL Cool J remained fierce, charismatic, and larger than life. But those who knew him saw the emptiness he carried. During one memorial concert, he said, "Every time I step up to the mic, I still hear his voice saying, 'Good job, James.' And that's how I know Jay's still here in every beat." Jam Master Jay's death etched a permanent scar on LL's soul. But it also deepened him, made him wiser, more grounded. He learned to turn grief into purpose loss, into legacy. Because the beat may stop, but brotherhood never does. And in LL Cool J's heart, amid the roaring crowds and blinding lights, one familiar rhythm still echoes, the voice of an old friend nodding in the dark, whispering, "Go ahead, James. Start the track." Financial tragedy, when trust became a $2 million debt. At the height of fame, LL Cool J thought he had outrun every tragedy. He had money success, a loving family. But the next betrayal would come not from an enemy, but from the man he once called father. In the early 2000s, LL handed full control of his finances to his biological father, James Nunez Smith, the same man who had shattered his childhood in blood. LL believed time had changed him. His father began managing his books, taxes, and LL's entertainment company. Everything seemed fine until letters from the IRS started piling up. When he opened them, LL felt as though lightning struck. Unpaid taxes, overused credit cards, suspicious transactions. James Nunez had been using his son's company accounts for personal spending, buying cars, jewelry, even lending money to others off the record. Worse, he had failed to pay income taxes, for years leaving LL with a massive debt, nearly $2 million owed to the IRS. In show business, stories of artists being scammed aren't rare, but being betrayed by one's own father is almost unheard of. LL later said that when he read the notice from the IRS, it felt like someone squeezed the life out of my heart. The man he had struggled for years to forgive had betrayed him again. This time not with violence, but with greed and deceit. The shock forced LL to pause his music projects and completely rebuild his financial system. He hired independent auditors, tax attorneys, and dismantled his old management team. Some assets were seized, contracts delayed, and his reputation wavered. For a man who had earned tens of millions, falling into financial chaos was unthinkable. But it happened all because of one word: trust. LL Cool J never sued his father. He simply cut all contact and bore the consequences in silence. "I paid for both of us," he said in a rare interview. "But at least this time, I learned that no one can take responsibility for me but me." From that fall onward, LL transformed completely. He became meticulous, overseeing every contract, every signature, every dollar. "I don't let anyone touch my money anymore," he said. "I don't need a wallet keeper, I just need to stay awake." That financial tragedy wasn't just about losing money. It was the collapse of the last thread of trust between father and son. After years of forgiveness, LL had to face the truth: some people don't change, and sometimes family inflicts the deepest wounds. Yet LL Cool J refused to let bitterness consume him. He turned pain into wisdom. In talks about financial literacy for artists, he often says, "I lost $2 million learning how to keep the other $200 million. The line sounds cold, but behind it lies the hard-earned resilience of a man beaten down by life, yet still standing tall. LL never let money define him, but he came to understand its value better than anyone. Since then, LL has invested wisely, producing films, founding his own entertainment company, and creating funds to support young artists. He even wrote books about self-development and financial discipline. Warning newcomers. Don't hand your wallet to someone just because they share your last name. The $2 million tragedy didn't destroy LL Cool J, it woke him up. Because through every downfall, there's one thing he's never lost: the survival instinct of a child who once walked out of hell. And this time that hell didn't come from gunfire, but from numbers. Yet once again, LL Cool J emerged stronger, sharper, and wiser than ever. The betrayal of a best friend. After overcoming his financial crisis, LL Cool J reopened his entertainment company, rebuilt his team, and handed executive control to Brian Latter, a longtime friend and trusted confidant. Brian wasn't just a business partner, he was the godfather of LL's son, a man treated like family. LL trusted him completely, granting him authority to sign contracts, manage accounts, and handle financial transactions on his behalf. Their bond seemed unbreakable, until tragedy revealed the truth. Within the company, Cornell Clark, LL Cool J's longtime manager, was dying of late-stage AIDS. LL instructed Brian to transfer funds to cover Cornell's medical expenses as a gesture of gratitude, but Brian never did. He ignored the order, failed to report back, and let the dying man pass away in silence and poverty. LL only learned of it after Cornell's death. When confronted, Brian made excuses, claiming accounting reasons. But to LL, there was no justification. The man he had trusted the godfather to his son had chosen to keep the money instead of honoring a dying friend's dignity. In an interview later, LL recalled, "I felt deceived all over again. But this time, it wasn't about money, it was about trust." Anger and heartbreak consumed him. LL immediately severed ties with Brian Latter, terminated his contract, and froze all company accounts. He personally reviewed every transaction from the past 3 years and uncovered more irregularities. Yet instead of launching a public scandal, he chose silence, withdrawing, rebuilding from scratch. This betrayal became the final blow that changed LL forever. From then on, he refused to delegate financial control to anyone, not even family. "I learned the most expensive lesson," he said. "Your career is your life. Don't let anyone else hold your soul for you." The Brian Latter incident didn't just make LL more cautious, it made him lose a piece of faith in humanity. Friends were now colleagues. Relationships existed only through absolute transparency. But in that cold distance, LL found something precious: self-mastery. After years of letting others decide his fate, he was finally in full control. In his memoir, "I Make My Own Rules," LL Cool J wrote, "When you live in a world full of light, you have to light your own path, because the ones standing closest to the light are also the ones who cast the darkest shadows." That line says it all. He was no longer the naive kid who believed friendship or blood ties were enough. He understood that in the entertainment world, trust is the rarest and most fragile currency. From then on, LL became more private, focusing on family and meaningful projects. He later admitted that Brian's betrayal hurt even more than the beatings of his childhood. "At least when you're beaten, you know who's doing it. But when you're betrayed, you smile at the person holding the knife." And so from a boy shot by his father, beaten by his stepfather, and betrayed by his friend, LL Cool J learned the hardest truth of all. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one who hates you, it's the one who once called you brother. When the audience turned their backs, and his reputation crumbled by the late 1980s, LL Cool J's name dominated the charts. He was hailed as the Midas King of hip-hop. Everything he touched turned to gold. But just as he reached the height of fame, fate struck a harsh blow. In 1989, he released Walking with a Panther, a polished, flashy, and heavily commercial album. To the general public, it was progress. To the hip-hop community, it was betrayal. They called him a sellout, an artist who had sold his soul for money and fame. In a culture built on authenticity and street truth, that label was a death sentence for credibility. When LL took the stage at Harlem's legendary Apollo Theater, the same crowd that once screamed his name now booed, hissed, and hurled bottles. It was his first public downfall. The star who once ruled the radio now stood rejected by his own fans. Under the harsh spotlight, sweat pouring down his face, he could hear the shouts pierce through his pride like knives. "I felt like I didn't belong anymore," he later recalled. "I thought I was everyone's guy, but I learned people can walk away overnight." The humiliation sent LL Cool J spiraling into crisis. Critics attacked. Peers distanced themselves. Labels grew hesitant. Within a year, he vanished from major stages. But in that darkness, LL did what he had always done best: he fought back. He locked himself in the studio, replaying old demos, the raw tracks that once made him great. He realized he had lost touch with his roots, that raw energy, that grit and honesty that defined true hip-hop. And from that realization, a new LL Cool J was born. In 1990, he came back swinging with Mama Saeed Knock You Out. From the opening line, he fired a warning shot. Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. That wasn't just a lyric, it was a declaration of war. LL transformed the pain of rejection into an artistic masterpiece. The album exploded, selling over 2 million copies, earning a Grammy for Best Rap Solo Performance in 1992, and restoring him to his rightful throne as one of hip-hop's untouchable icons. But behind that victory was a man who had learned to balance on the razor's edge between art and commerce. LL understood now that in entertainment, love and hate cheers and boos, they can switch places in a heartbeat. I don't resent them, he said, because if they could turn on me, it means they once believed in me. My job was to win that belief back. After Mama Saeed Knock You Out, LL stopped chasing trends. He made music for himself, but never forgot his audience. He rapped about pain, forgiveness, and loyalty themes only a man scarred by betrayal could truly understand. The fall at Apollo became a defining lesson, one that made LL Cool J wiser than any of his peers. He didn't just survive the crisis, he transcended it. He turned booze into fuel, humiliation into legacy. And in a poetic twist, that night in 1989, when the audience turned their backs, became the very moment that forged the legend of LL Cool J. The man who proved that when your music is real, the world always finds its way back to you. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. We'll keep bringing you real stories, the lives behind the spotlight, where glory and tragedy often walk hand in hand. And leave us a comment below. What do you think keeps LL Cool J standing strong after everything he's been through?
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast.
There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.